Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. I knew that from the moment I stepped into my new school, nothing would ever be the same again. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and moving an hour away from the city meant I needed to readjust to everything. As per my father's request and my mother's insistence, I have to keep a low profile and stay out of trouble. The demographics of the area are quite diverse. There are blacks, Hispanics, some Italians, and Jews. Still, it was mainly dominated by stubborn Germans who were not Amish or Mennonites, but simply German Lutherans who controlled the area and everything it had to offer. It's like a melting pot here, so I don't really have any trouble fitting in. I just miss my friends in Philly. I chose to stay in the area after graduation, mostly to be closer to my family. I still go back to my old neighborhood often to visit my friends and keep in close contact with them. My first job was driving a fuel delivery truck, and after a couple years I moved indoors to dispatch and take orders. I'm very talented at this job and can even imagine starting a similar company myself in a few years. I've never had any difficulty in interacting with the opposite sex, and my social life is much better than I expected. When I got married, my mother was a little disappointed that my new wife, Marcy, was not of Italian descent, but she did her best to make sure that Marcy was fully accepted without any reservations. After having 2 kids, Marcy insisted I get sterilized. I don't have a problem with that, but when the kids start school, Marcy wants to go out and work. My father always thought it wasn't a good idea for his wife and mother to go to work. As I look back now, that thought does make some sense. Rather than minding Marcy working, I don't like her socializing with people she's known since childhood. I like some of her friends, but not all. While in school, she participates in various student activities and really enjoys them. I, on the other hand, avoid these events and the people involved. I always think they're just a bunch of snobs blowing each other off. I know she had sex before she met me, but so did I. We never discussed what each of us had been through before we got together. It wasn't a rule. It was just our unspoken tacit agreement. We were married for about 10 years when things started to crack. Marcy works in the claims department of a local national insurance company. When she started working a lot of overtime and weekends, I started to worry. When the seminar thing came up 6 months later, I knew I had to end it. "Tony, I really don't see what the problem is," she said. "It's only been 3 days. I've spoken to your mother, and she's agreed to watch the kids while I'm gone. You'll be home at night, and I know you can cook." I couldn't believe she had the nerve to ask me that. "Who wants to attend this workshop?" She seemed to perk up a bit when she answered, "6 girls in the department, Betty Klink from HR, and Rodney." I laughed when she mentioned his name. I'm surprised she didn't realize that I already knew about those special lunches and nightly work sessions she had with her immediate boss, Rodney. Rodney grew up with Marcy and was the type of kid who was in every club and activity while in school, except sports. "Do you think I'm a fool, Marcy? I don't understand. What are you talking about? I've known about you and Rodney for 6 months. If you think I'm going to let you go out with him for 3 days, you're crazy." "Tony, what are you talking about? Rodney's just my boss. There's nothing between us. You know I would never betray you." I looked at the empty Budweiser can in my hand and slowly got up from my chair. As I walked towards the kitchen, I crushed the thin aluminum can flat and threw it towards the trash. I missed the pitch, but didn't bother to pick it up. The freshly opened beer fizzed and I resumed my seat. Marcy just sat there, waiting for my response. "You're the mother of my children, and you're doing a great job as a mother. The only reason I haven't kicked you out is this." I talked to my mom and explained everything to her. She said I should remain firm for the sake of the children, and I hope you will come to your senses in time. "You told your mom I cheated on her?" "No, a lady at church told her. When she came to question me, I just didn't deny it." "You're not serious, are you? Why did you say that?" I took a big gulp of my beer and smiled. "Rodney lives at 321 David Drive, just 3 blocks from your office. You and your supervisor usually go there 3 times a week and spend almost 3 hours each time. Are you going to explain to me what you do for 3 hours in his apartment? And then you tell me about the extra shifts you've been working. Did you know that your office janitor goes to my mother's church too?" Her eyes were moist, her lower lip trembling. "As long as you don't publicly humiliate me or my family, I won't take any action. If the situation changes, then nothing can be said. You can leave or you can stay, but you will never take my sons." She suddenly jumped up angrily. "Damn, Tony, I hate you. You asshole." It was the first time she had ever sworn at me, the first time she had ever made a derogatory comment about where I came from. Her inner prejudices were finally exposed. We have 2 sons, Terry and Rick, who share a room with bunk beds. The third bedroom was the utility room and from that day on became my sleeping quarters. It's a rental house and we've saved over $60,000 as a down payment on our dream house. But my dream has turned into a nightmare. The seminar went away, Marcy stopped working overtime, and she started bringing her lunch to work. The atmosphere in the house was not cool, but cold and harsh. Mother never received any more news from her church friends. On the surface, things seemed to be returning to normal, but I felt uncomfortable. There was no intimacy at the time, but I wouldn't have tolerated the situation for long. Against my better judgment, I agreed to accompany Marcy to the company Christmas party. I didn't want her to go alone, and I figured I could make it through the night by just staying quiet. It's a good plan, but full of flaws. The company rents a hall with a dance floor, buffet tables, and several open bars. I could drink just 3 beers all night and not feel any discomfort that way. By the time we got there, the only table left was near the bigwigs of the company. Apparently, all the employees are avoiding those seats. Everything was okay for the first hour. I noticed Rodney on the other side of the room with his friends. Several of the men Marcy works with ask her to dance, but good old Rodney keeps his distance. I'm happy to let her dance because I don't want to. Just as I started my 3rd beer, I noticed Marcy and Rodney exchanging glances. It was mostly nodding and cocking of the head in a gesture, but there was clearly something going on. I tried to act as bored as I could, but was still keeping an eye on them. My wife excused herself to go to the women's restroom, and I did a quick scan of the room and realized Rodney was gone. It's unbelievable that she had the audacity to date that asshole in my presence after we talked about it at home. She could see him anytime during working hours without the risk of being disturbed. I'm sure the only reason they did it was to make a fool out of me at the company party. By hooking up with Rodney in plain sight, she's letting everyone see that I'm being cuckolded. His foxy friend stood next to the bar with a big grin on his face. As Marcy enters the hallway leading to the restroom, she turns around to make sure I'm still in my seat and disappears. I stopped by the main table on my way to the restroom and leaned over to apologize for interrupting the party, just to get their attention. The guys on the other side of the room with the goofy grins suddenly stopped laughing, and they looked uneasy because they didn't know how to help good old Rodney. I went to the women's restroom first and found it empty. I found them in the men's restroom. They were kissing, and he had his back to me and his hand was up her skirt, and she didn't resist. I grabbed Rodney by the back of the neck, took a step sideways, and then slammed his head hard into the bathroom tile. Something must have broken. I could hear my wife calling my name over and over again, but I completely ignored it. I turned that asshole around and the blood from his broken nose splattered all over me. He was limp but still standing, so I punched him in the stomach again, and he fell down and immediately started vomiting. Marcy tugs at the sleeve of my jacket, but to no avail. The hall was silent as I dragged Rodney by his tie to the center of the dance floor. I may be strangling him, but I don't even care. The band stopped playing, and everyone watched as I threw him to the ground. I looked around to see if anyone wanted to come to his rescue, but no one dared step forward. I apologize for ruining your nice party. I'm leaving now, but I'm leaving my wife here for your entertainment. Rodney, just send her home when you're done playing. Rodney is trying to get up on his hands and knees, his face a bloody mess. Marcy stood in the doorway, her mouth open. It's hard to tell if she's upset about what I did to her lover or what I just said to all her coworkers. It doesn't even matter to me. I noticed Rodney was right under the mistletoe, and I couldn't resist giving him another kick right in the nuts before I left, a kick he'll remember for at least a week. He immediately fell forward and hit his face on the floor again. That must have hurt. No one said a word. I called my mother from the car to come pick up the kids. Going away for a few days seemed like a good idea, and I didn't want to leave the kids with their mother. I'm sure she's not capable of taking care of them properly right now. I planned as I drove, but had absolutely no idea where I was going or what I was going to do. My boss was quick to give me about a week's vacation. When I got home, Mom and Dad were already there. After paying the babysitter, I helped pack up the kids. My duffel bag was mostly socks and underwear, but I threw in a few shirts and pants just in case. Before I left, I removed the safe from the basement rafters. The bank's deposit rate was less than 1%, so I decided to keep my money at home. I know it's stupid to keep $62,000 in the house, but I think it's a habit I inherited from my mom. She used to always have a huge stash of money stashed all over the kitchen. I was turning off the lights when a cab stopped and delivered Marcy. She walked in and sat down on the couch without a word. She looked more worried than angry, more frustrated than scared. I told you there was only one rule. Don't humiliate me or my family in public. You just can't help it, can you? I waited a moment, watched her start to cry, and then walked out the door. Just after 9 p.m., I drove up the Schuylkill freeway. Damn, this party didn't last long for me. I decided to spend a few days in Atlantic City before heading home, but first I had to see my old friend Sam. Sam owns a sandwich store in the old neighborhood. It's not one of those fancy stores you see in Philadelphia tourist promos, but more of a convenience place for people who live in the neighborhood. His main income comes from other businesses, which we either pretend not to see or get involved in. He lived on the second floor and had an office in the back room. When I explained my situation, it was like a reunion of old friends. Tony, this is going to cost you $20,000. Can you afford it? Or do you need me to pad you out? I have money, no problem. I replied. Do you want messy or quiet and clean? Transparent. Stay out of trouble. Nothing. You'll have to leave for a few days. What's the arrangement? No, I was thinking of going to Atlantic City. I replied. How about 6 days and 7 nights at Edge? What are you talking about, S? I asked. I have some points to use. I think it's just right for you. Sounds good. I'll go alone. Tony, are you going alone? He asked. Yeah, it was all impromptu. I didn't have time to invite anyone else. I replied. You shouldn't be alone. You need someone to help you confirm that you're there. Hold on. S picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. Carla, it's S. Make yourself pretty and hurry over. After a brief pause, no, it's not that. You're going on vacation. He was still snickering when he hung up. Tony, you remember my brother Michael's oldest daughter? Yeah, the little chubby girl who's always smiling and has dark brown eyes. How old is she now? S laughed at my description of his niece. She's 23 now, Tony, and not fat at all. Suddenly I realized Carla was going to the beach with me. Since she's S's niece, I feel a little uncomfortable. But hell, he's the one who's setting this up. Tony, do you have a credit card? I have two that I was going to cancel Monday morning. No, don't do that. I want you to use as many of these credit cards as possible. Meals, room service, and even some casino cash advances. But don't go overboard. You need those swipes to prove you were there. Spread the time out so it doesn't look like you're sneaking home. It may cost you a few dimes, but it's cheap insurance. Sam knows his business. While I was thinking about all this, Carla came in. Tony, I haven't seen you since you moved to the country. You look good. Now I know why Sam is smiling. Carla is simply gorgeous. Those dark eyes are mesmerizing, and her once baby fat seems to have transferred to her breasts. When I jumped up awkwardly, I knocked over my chair. Tony needs someone to stay with him in Atlantic City for a few days, would you? When Sam said that, her mood seemed to change a bit. Aren't you still married? She asked me directly. Before I could answer, Sam interjected. The marriage is over, Carla. Tony needs a nurse now. I knew you always liked him, so I thought of you first. Sam, I'm not going to break up someone's family. It's not fair of you to ask that of me. Besides, I'm not your whore. So why don't you find a girl to go with him? I don't expect you to sleep with him. Just keep him company and help him forget his troubles. Carla gave a confused look as if she had just realized something. She's as smart as she is beautiful. Sorry. She looks at Sam and then at me with a small smile. I'd love to go with you, Tony, but you have to promise to buy me some saltwater toffee. We're all laughing now. I need an hour to get ready. Don't let him drink, Sam. I don't want to drive there with a drunk. I think she winked at me as she left to go pack. Sam and I refreshed our discussion, and he readily accepted my $20,000 with a promise of complete satisfaction. The drive to Atlantic City went well, except for the fact that I had to tell Carla in detail about my problems with Marcy. Her only comment was, "Oh, poor kids." Carla frowned when she saw the double bed, but luckily she didn't notice me snickering. "I'm pretty sure we'll only be using one of the beds by the end of the week. Everything is watertight." I spent a week in Atlantic City with Carla. During that time, the police came by a couple times to inquire about Rodney's disappearance. When I got home, I ate dinner with the kids every night and spent as much time as I could with them on the weekends. It was obvious to everyone that Marcy and I were no longer a couple, even though we remained married. I rented a small apartment a few blocks from home, close enough for the kids to walk over anytime. Carla moved in with me. The police talked to me a couple more times and then stopped bothering me. Rodney Foote got into a cab after leaving the hospital and has not been seen since. His family offered a reward for any pertinent information, but received no response. Marcy spends a lot of time with her parents and sister, and I have no problem with that. There's no indication that she's seeing anyone else. She quit her job after the Christmas party and doesn't seem to have much interest in finding a new one. We never finished the conversation we had when we got home that night. She played the role of a good mother. The house was always neat and clean. The children were well fed and their clothes were always clean and tidy. I do all the yard and outdoor work. Each week I give Marcy $200 for household expenses, food, and her personal needs. I always ask her if she needs more, and she always declines. We no longer use any credit cards. At Thanksgiving and Christmas, the kids and I are with my family, and Carla usually joins us. Marcy, on the other hand, spends the holidays with her family, but will be with her children on Christmas Eve. Whenever Terry or Rick wanted to talk about the relationship between their mother and me, we refused to discuss it. I appreciate her cooperation in this regard, but then again, what can she say? This farce went on for years. Of course, my simple explanation is far from fully describing what really happened. Complications and disagreements have continued to arise, but we have survived. It was great with Carla at first, but as time went on, she started spending more time with her family in Philadelphia and less time with me. I can't blame her, and I appreciate all the effort she put into making this breakup more bearable. The way things are going, I can't divorce Marcy, and I can't kick her out as long as the kids are home. These are limits I set for myself, but I stick to them. I hated the whole situation, but couldn't think of anything else to do. However, the children found a turnaround. Things came to a head when Terry was 16. One of the new kids at school is the nephew of my wife's ex-lover, and he keeps provoking Terry to talk about it. It was the first time anyone had brought it up at school, and he was completely unprepared to deal with it. Rodney's nephew ended up in the hospital, and I had to pick up Terry from school. He was suspended for 2 weeks and faces possible assault charges. Unfortunately, Rick was there and tried to help his brother. He lost 2 teeth as a result, but won his brother's admiration. When I came home with the boys, Marcy greeted us at the door. Terry immediately starts getting mad at his mother, questioning why she never talked to them all these years about what happened. Marcy made no defense, just stood there listening to her oldest son express his anger. I left them alone and took Rick to the dentist. Rick didn't seem too concerned about the lost tooth, but I wasn't too happy about the upcoming dental bill. When we got home, Marcy was gone. Her car is still there, but that's all that's left. Terry said she just took her purse and left without saying a word or giving any explanation. I took a week off to calm things down. Marcy's parents and sister refused to speak to me. A week has passed and I still don't know where she is or what her intentions are. Carla and I moved into that house. The whole thing about us sharing a bed was uncomfortable at first, but the kids accepted it much easier than I thought they would. One day I went to work and everything in the house that belonged to or was related to Marcy had disappeared. I don't know what Carla does with them, and I've never asked. Carla has taken over all the duties that Marcy used to do. I gave her a couple of credit cards to make life easier. Oddly enough, I trust my lover more than I trust my wife. I sold Marcy's car and bought Carla a new one. With the new arrangement, family gatherings became less stressful. Carla was happier than ever, and my mother was ecstatic. Terry and Rick never got into trouble at school again, and Rodney's nephew never came back. Things are finally starting to look up, but I'm still married. I waited 2 months before I went to the police to report Marcy missing, when in fact I was only reporting her as a runaway spouse so that I could use that report when I filed for divorce on the grounds of abandonment. I waited another 2 months to file the divorce papers, and she had to be gone for a full year before it was granted. I'm planning for the future. Life at home gradually normalized. Terry and Rick get along well with Carla. They never call her mom and always call her Carla, but everything fits together. We're more of a family than we've been in years. One day, my final judgment of divorce was delivered out of the blue, and I was finally free. 2 weeks later, Carla and I drove to Elkton to tie the knot. We are a whole family again. Terry joined the Air Force out of school, and a year later Rick decided to go to meat processing school in Toledo. It all happened so fast, and soon Carla and I were all that was left of each other. We never heard from Marcy again. Mom and Dad moved to Ocala and made everyone commit to visiting them at least twice a year. Since there was nothing left to keep us in reading, Carla and I moved back home to Philadelphia. Rick worked at an upscale butcher store in Westchester after graduating from school. We get to see him a couple times a month, and he always surprises us with some goodies. About a year later, one of Carla's nieces was getting married, so naturally we had to go to that. An Italian wedding in Philadelphia is a big deal. When I say big, I mean that there were a lot of people attending, mostly relatives, but also a lot of people who came to dabble. It didn't matter because there was always more than enough food and booze. We were enjoying the evening with some friends, and I noticed that Carla seemed a little nervous. I saw her look over to the dance floor several times as if she was staring at something. I took a few quick glances, saw nothing, and forgot about it. It wasn't until my wife excused herself to go to the women's restroom that things didn't seem quite right. I watched her walk toward the back of the hall to meet up with an old friend of hers. There's a lot of chatting and posing comparing, but it all seems normal. Carla never went to the restroom, but instead walked over to one of Sam's personal assistants. Carla kept pointing to the table her friend had just come to. There were 3 men and 3 women sitting there. They looked like posing gangsters, and the women were overdressed and looked a little tacky. Carla returned with a thoughtful but confident expression. "Tony, we have a little problem." I guessed it from the way she circled the room. "Care to explain?" "You've got to stay calm. In a few minutes, one of the men over at Gina's table will come and pick on you." "What do you mean, provoking me?" "He'll say insulting things about me to get you riled up. When you get up to fight, the 3 of them are ready to swarm you." "Are you saying I should let him talk about you like that?" "Work with him first, at least until Bobby V and his people are in position. You might have to deal with one of them, but that's the worst-case scenario." "You mean you want me to cooperate with him in insulting you?" "If he calls me a bitch, just ask him how much he's willing to pay. In that case, whatever you do, don't let him provoke you." "What's going on here? What did I do to piss these guys off?" I asked. "Look at Gina's desk." "Uh-huh. You see that woman with the short platinum blonde hair?" She pointed. "See, take a closer look. Oh my God, it's Marcy." "What's Marcy doing here?" I asked. "Marcy's boyfriend seems to be somewhat related to the bride. Looks like she's still mad at you, and designed to teach you a lesson when she found out you were here. While you and Sam's people take care of things outside, Gina and I will talk to Marcy in the women's restroom. It won't be pleasant. I don't like the way things are going. It was a wedding, a night the young bride will always remember. It wasn't fair to let a couple of punks ruin her wedding." 10 minutes later, I noticed Marcy's boyfriend get up from his chair. I stood up and apologized to the people around the table. Carla gave me a strange look, but seemed to understand. I walked as if nothing had happened to me towards the fire exit on the side where people go out to smoke. That boyfriend nodded, and the other 2 stood up to follow him. What they didn't see was the 3 men following from behind the bar, holding the Louisville bats they had placed behind the bar. When I told the 6 people smoking at the fire exit to get the hell out of there, they didn't hesitate. I think it was the urgency in my voice that did the trick. I took about 20 steps out of the doorway and stopped and turned around. They were still smiling when they came out, but the smiles didn't last long. Seconds later, they heard the door close behind them, and the smiles disappeared when they turned to see 3 men with bats and the father of the bride. It was all over in less than 30 seconds. I never raised my hand. I apologize for any inconvenience caused on this particular night. I feel like a character from The Godfather. Thank you for having the decency to take things outside and work things out." He shook my hand and went back to be with his daughter. I thanked Sal's people for their help and went in to find Carla. They stayed behind to clean up the scene. I think it's time to leave. Carla wasn't around, and the table where Marcy sat was empty. Rick and some of his friends were there and heard about the commotion. He found me in a bar. Dad, what's going on? My first reaction was to bite my tongue and say nothing. But it didn't work. Your mom's here with her new boyfriend. I don't need to know any more than that. He smiled and turned to the bartender, asking for a beer. We sat there for an hour talking about other things. Carla finally shows up, looking a little worse for wear. Where have you been? I asked. She gave a wicked smile. Gina and I had to take your ex-wife to the hospital. She suddenly wasn't feeling well. Rick and I couldn't help but laugh. Tony, can we go home now? It was a long night, but really fun. We never saw Marcy again. Carla and I still live in the old neighborhood, and life is good. And with that, we reached the end of today's story. Did it go as you expected? Or was there a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If this story fascinates you, please like it. If you're new or haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to join our community. I bring new compelling stories every day, so click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.